Real Estate Investing Profits presents Profit Masters with your host, world-renowned real estate coach and investor, Corey Boatwright. Now, strap in and get ready to learn elite wealth-building investment strategies taught by 6- and 7-figure house flipping masters as they reveal their best real estate investing profit secrets to you right now.
What's going on? This is Corey Boatwright, founder of Real Estate Investing Profits and your host for Real Estate Profit Masters podcast. And I'm excited about having our guest, Brock Collins. Have you heard of who Brock Collins is? If you haven't, then you need to check out his podcast, Freedom Real Estate Investing. And he talks about reason for everything in real estate. His big why is freedom. And maybe that's how you feel too. Maybe you're interested in getting involved with real estate investing, or you are a real estate investor and you did it because you wanted freedom. And who doesn't? Who doesn't want freedom, right? Who wants to work with a boss that's over your shoulder saying, "Did you get this done today? Did you get this done?" Rah, 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 rah. Right? I mean, you probably have some picture of like a cartoon right now by me, saying that. No one wants that, right? You want to have freedom. And Brock Collins is the guy that has really achieved this in his life. I mean, he bought every book and course and tape and seminar you can imagine, and it wasn't enough. And what happened for him is he jumped in, he got a mentor, and it changed everything for him. And what he did is it's really just worked out incredible for him. He has crushed it in the real estate investing arena, and he has his whole system run on autopilot. And what he talks about in this interview is pretty interesting. He asks some very good questions, but you're going to hear him talk about his why more than anyone else. If you've listened to any of our interviews, he talks about his why more than anyone else I know, and it's about freedom. So make sure you listen in, and I want to remind you, if you haven't already, got our real estate investing quick start guide, the down and dirty ultimate real estate investing quick start guide. You can text the word profit to 38470, and you'll immediately get the quick start guide. All right. So I hope you're doing phenomenal, right? I always say every morning when I get up in the shower, I always say my worst day is someone else's paradise. That gives you great perspective. I hope you have a big smile on your face, and I want you to enjoy this interview with the real estate investing freedom man himself, Mr. Brock Collins. Here you go. Well, what's going on, Brock? How you doing?
Hey, Corey, thanks for having me on, man. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate you making the time to be on here. You know, you are there by Chicago, right? Just outside of Chicago?
That's correct. Just south of Chicago. Uh-huh.
Okay. And we'll have already here in the show notes, and I've already kind of talked about a little bit of what you do to the audience here for Profit Masters. But I'd like for you to take just a few minutes here, explain kind of what your area of expertise is in real estate, and kind of what made you get involved in real estate in the beginning.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very blue-collar home. Always had enough, but my friends that I grew up with in high school, they always had more, and I always wanted to know what was on that side of the fence, right? And their parents did real estate and owned businesses, and that's something I didn't learn in my own home. And so, basically I just started studying and reading books and saving money, going to seminars and that kind of thing, and just to see what's on the other side of the fence.
Right.
And so because I started having the knowledge, but I didn't have the money, so what I had to do was start figuring out how to do deals with nothing down strategies. And I don't know, at what point you were getting started, but one of my first things was Carlton Sheets and then Robert Allen and all their books, and it just
down.
Yeah. And so basically, what I've done is just use hybrids of by accident actually and tenacity of nothing down strategies, and I've done well over 100 deals in houses and investment properties, and using none of my own money. And when I say that, sometimes people don't use any of their money, and they bring in partners and give up half the ownership. Right. Every property I've always ever purchased, I bought 100% control, 100% ownership. I've never given any of that equity away. And because I learned how to do it with no money, when you have money, it's still like the art of the deal to not use your own money. And,
right.
And so it's still a good time to do that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Did you have a moment in your life where you're working some type of job or doing something that you really hated, and you're just realizing that, there's something better in life, and you kind of had like enough's enough moment where you broke through to kind of this awareness that I need to be involved with real estate, or was it just a natural progression for you?
I don't know how many people you've met, Corey, but my problem was I'll do it tomorrow.
We all have said that.
And starting
before.
tomorrow, I'm going to do this. And then tomorrow comes and something comes up. Well, maybe next weekend. And that's how I was. I had educated well, but I never took action. And so at the time, what I was doing, I was selling appliances, real fancy high end, right? And, sexy, not really.
What kind of appliances were they?
They were, washers, dryers, refrigerators, and it was just an appliance outfit. And so here I was working 50, 60 hours a week,
right,
making 24 grand a year. And it was just, I hit that wall and it was like, man, all right, I got to take these action steps. So what I did is I reached out to, through a friend of a friend, the owner of a large brokerage firm in our area. And I said, hey, can I take you to lunch? And so he took me up, and what I was wanting was just knowledge of how to invest. And what he said is, how about you come work for me and get your license, and then I'll teach you or introduce you to the mortgage lenders, the attorneys, the other realtors. And so I got off the creative side and went down that ladder of putting on a realtor hat.
That's another great question we flow into next is, what was one of your biggest influence? You said Carleton Sheets, but it sounds like this other guy was one of your mentors as well. Did you have a big influence in real estate investing besides him and besides Carleton Sheets?
Yeah, and it turned out to be a little bit sideways because I thought I was getting the knowledge by getting with him of investing, but really I got thrown feet first into how to do conventional real estate sales. 20% down, and you use a banker. You have to always do it this way. There's no other way it can work. And so it really, unfortunately for me, I got brainwashed that there's no other way to do it. And so the shift for me was reaching out of that to people who weren't really wearing the realtor hat at the time and that were investing.
Interesting.
And so I reached out to a guy who had bought about 20 properties, and he was buying them only to cash flow. So he kept them all. And he just started buying them cheap, under market, cleaning them up, and they were renting. And the biggest shift for me was back in the early 90s. He was renting these things for like $325 a month. Today, he's renting those same properties for almost $1,000 a month.
Jeez.
And on his shift, nothing changed.
Right.
He just bought them, controlled them, and made a wise decision. And so that was one of my biggest shifts, is seeing the progress through that.
So you broke through that kind of veil of conventional investing per se into this kind of idea that you could either control or take properties over by having nothing down and involved in them. Did you have a big mistake, or did you have like a quote failure that you went through, one of your worst deals? And if you did have that, what did you do to get through it? Can you walk us through one of your kind of deals that was like a painful situation that we can learn from?
Absolutely. And for your listeners right now, I want you to know that when you buy real estate with emotion, chances are you'll lose money. And sometimes when you get to that spot, what happens is you do it by accident. And what I did is I shut off my marketing funnel, and I thought, I can find deals by myself and just through this and that. And so what happened was, before I knew it, there was no deals coming in. The pipeline was empty. I had no money out there. Yep. And so I was moving and shaking everything to find a deal. And all of a sudden, I wanted a deal so bad that I went out and thought it was a good deal, but I really overpaid for it.
Sure, because you're emotional in it.
Emotional.
Right?
It wasn't about, when you look at a property, the right way to do it is back your numbers out, throw your profit in it, and then no matter what happens, you're in profit mode on day one. But when you use your emotions, I won't go down to having a spouse involved. If your spouse sees the property, for instance, like your own home, and you're looking for a home.
Right. She likes the kitchen, or she likes one of the bathrooms or something.
Chances are for your own home, you're going to pay retail value, and that's just how it is. Right. On the investment side, though, it's all about numbers. For me, though, what happened is I overpaid for this house, Corey, because I wanted a deal so bad, and I failed by shutting my marketing funnels off. And what happened to be worse about the deal was, once I got into it, I didn't realize how bad the mold was. And so it wasn't a surface mold. What we ended up having to do is take out all the drywall, take out all the hardwood floors. Underneath the hardwood floors, in between the subfloors, they were filled with black mold. So we had to take all the subfloors out. And so it turned, a 1-month project turned into like a 5-month project. And at the very end of working all that time and and having some friends bail me out, it was basically a break-even deal.
Right. Yeah. You thought your profit's going to be in there and no profit after that.
Nothing there. No.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, okay. So you actually are doing some deals with your team. You have a rehab team. What is one of we call it our Profit Master investing strategies. Can you share one thing that's working extremely well in your business right now, Brock? What's one of the strategies that's making you the most profits right now?
The most profits for me, and it took me probably 12 or 13 years to finally sink in, was to remove myself from the daily business.
Right.
And so the consistency of getting your phone to ring to find those off-market deals, right? But when you bring people in that are better at you, there's really not a lot of money in swinging a hammer. And so if you're paying a guy $20 an hour to do that, is that all your time's worth?
Right.
And so when you can pay a guy doing that, and like right now, I've got 5 rehabs going on, and I have my subcontractors at everyone. So you and I are talking. I'm in my home office right now, and I was just playing with my dog a little bit ago. Right? It's the freedom lifestyle that I'm after. So it's not it's not a push button thing, right? Mm-hmm. But it takes a while to get to that spot. But hiring people that are better at things than you are, so you can pull back. And just so your listeners know, sometimes people look at property and say, there's no money left to pay this. I've got to do it all myself. And that all happens on the front end when you're making your offer, is building the cost of hiring that out for people can do the work that you don't want to do.
That's so true. We talk about that actually in a framework we call EDC, which is eliminate the things that you don't or shouldn't be doing. And a lot of those are $10 an hour type activities. We look at $10, $100 hour, $1,000, and $10,000 hour, and it's a concept, and it's perfect for what you just mentioned. So we do EDC, eliminate, delegate. So we delegate all the weaknesses, things we don't like to do. Some people are still licking stamps, right? You shouldn't be doing that for your marketing. And then C is create, right? So you create a position or create a process, like you just mentioned. And so, especially if you're having to do it more than once, you shouldn't be doing that yourself most of the time. Most of the time, it's a $10 activity or $20 activity that you should create a process and have somebody else, or delegate and have somebody else take care of it for you.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what's one piece of advice that you'd share with running a successful real estate business?
I would say, and I can say this from experience, and that is, if you treat real estate investing like a hobby, that's what you'll get back out of it. And so if you work a full-time job and you love your full-time job and never going to leave it, that's cool. But you still have to treat investing on the side as a real business. So whether you're doing it full-time or part-time, really you got to key in and know that if you want to make money on it consistently, you've got to treat it like a business, not just something fun to do on the side.
Can you give us an example of that? Because I think that's easy to say, but what do you really mean by it?
Okay, so let me give you an example. So for our listeners and your listeners right now, Corey, if you have someone in your training, right, and they're learning how to wholesale houses or flip paper, right?
Right.
And you say, listen, this is what you do. I want you to go out and I want you to send out 2,000 letters or 3,000 postcards as your first thing. Get used to talking to the sellers, right? And so someone sends out those letters or those things 1 month, and they talk to a couple sellers and get nervous. And they're like, well, I'm going to pull back a little bit. And next week, even though Corey told me to send out 3,000, I'm going to send out 100 because I'm just nervous. And then I'll get to it when I get to it. And then it turns into, I didn't get these out this month, and I know my phone's not ringing, but next month I'll do it. And then 6 months go by, and they get like, Corey, I haven't done a deal.
Right.
And you're like, well, when's
What's
the last
your
time
marketing?
Yeah. And well, this came in the way. My dog got sick, and I had to, and all of a sudden it becomes into something that's totally a hobby, right? And so really you have to have and how you treat real estate investing as a business, whether it's full-time or part-time, is you have to start with that why. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but why is it you want to do it? If you really don't have a big why going in, you will have roadblocks, challenges, things that come up that may be hard to work through, that those will be your give up point. My why isn't big enough to overcome this challenge, so I'm just going to stay at my cubicle job and forget about real estate. Your why has to be big enough on the way in.
Yeah, we are going to ask about that because I know that's a really important thing. Totally. I could not agree with you more on really defining that why, and actually asking why a couple more times after the why until you get a tear in your eye.
Yeah.
Well, if you had to start all over again, what would you change, and what advice would you give for kind of starting out investors?
starting out investors is, years ago, as I said in that Carlton Sheets, he talked about in his program, it was like the analysis paralysis, meaning you look at something, you study it, and then you're so confused about something or fear that you don't take the next step. And myself, and I know most of the new investors I talk to, Corey, educate themselves and not take action. Educate themselves and not take action.
Right.
And so if for your listeners right now, whether you've done a deal or you're wanting to do your first deal, education's so important, but the action step needs to be in. Every time you learn something, take that action steps. And if you're comfortable today, you're not taking enough action steps. You've got to get out until you're uncomfortable, until you reach that uncomfortable and you go work through that, and then make yourself uncomfortable again and go do it again.
Make yourself uncomfortable. I like that advice. And it's so true. We do get in this safe, secure, comfortable comfort zone, and we think that is working for us. And in reality, greatness happens outside of your comfort zone and pushing yourself. I mean, if you go into the gym, right, you push your muscles, you get bigger. You have to get outside of, you have to push a little bit more to get a little bit bigger to strengthen that muscle. I really love that. That's great advice here. What's your favorite motivational or business quote?
Years ago when I was working at a large RE/MAX office for the owner, basically the founder of RE/MAX in itself, which was big in the days in the 90s.
Right, yeah.
Basically what he said was determine what you want to do.
Okay.
Assemble the best talent you can find.
Okay.
And never, ever give up. And so that goes so along with just as an investor, understand why do you want to invest? What is it for? You want more money? Is it for freedom? If you want to retire rich, what is it? And really, you've got to internalize that. And then when it says assemble the best talent you can find, that's when we were talking earlier. If you don't know how to swing a hammer, it's probably better. Hire someone that does. If you don't know how to rip out and put in new cabinets, hire someone that does. And then the whole thing about never give up. Just as you and I have done lots of deals over the years, we know that there's things that come up that are hard and you don't learn about in a book and a tape. You only learn from being out in experience. And that's the part of the never give up, because, man, I'm on the backside of the never give up on the freedom side. And I know you are too. And it's so much better on that side.
Right. Yeah. Once you actually get to a benchmark and you're like, you can breathe a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, or you can go take a vacation. I know lots of investors haven't taken a vacation forever because they feel like if they leave, then all hell's going to break loose, right?
Right.
They haven't focused on any mechanics, they haven't focused on any processes, and that's what some of the things it takes to be able to put those things in place. That you can leave, you can go do things, and your business can still run. So, yeah, okay. So, what book do you recommend that has really affected your life in a positive way? I mean, really just rocked your world.
And you've probably heard this 100 times over, but as I told you, I was raised in a blue collar family. Investments and those kind of things were never ever talked about.
Sure.
And when I started buying every book and tape, and I said cassette tape because we were going back, right?
I remember cassette tapes, man.
And so,
I remember 8 tracks.
Well,
I remember even those big.
I remember them, but I never used
tracks.
them. All right, so I went to a Barnes and Noble, went to the real estate section, just on a whim, and found the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, Robert Kiyosaki, right? And so I read the book, and it really opened my mind. I'd never learned that in our own home.
Right.
We didn't hang around people that had money to understand that. But so you've heard that a lot. But what I think a lot of people missed is that next book that came along called Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yes.
And, I read it.
Business side, or so, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I read it and read it again, read it again, and it's another mind shift.
It is.
And for me, the biggest thing for me growing up in the family that loved me to death was just having the mind shift of money and how the rich get richer. Mm-hmm. And it was good. And you can't read it just once. You learn. It's kind of like reading the Bible, dude. If you open up the Bible, you might have read Mark chapter 5 and verse 1 before, but you read it today and
it means something different. It opens up something, right? Mm-hmm.
And so read it several times.
Yeah, Cash Flow Quadrant was very good, and it also I agree. It had a mental shift for me as well to understand that. You're really just self-employed and you work for a crazy person because you work for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Compared to having a business that is a machine, right? It's a machine, and that can, can run without you, and you can put oil in it, and it works. So, very interesting way to think about businesses. Many people are still self-employed, right? They think they have a business, right? Another great book I've talked about several times is The E-Myth, and I'm sure you probably read that book. That book really rocked my world as well, because it really taught me the difference between being a mechanic, right, and being somebody that I just doing all of the things, like getting under the car, looking at everything, looking at all that, compared to really being this entrepreneur, right? And there's an entrepreneur myth that we think we're entrepreneurs, when many times we're really just these mechanics, or even, quote, self-employed business guys. What's a favorite mobile app that you use in your business every day, Brock?
Actually, if it's okay, let's back up for a second, because I want to ask you a question about Michael Gerber's book. When I was getting started, I mean, I was probably in the business like 5 years.
Sure.
And I was cranking. I was the everything. I was the marketer. I was the hammer
You were
guy.
making pies, right?
Yeah, it was the everything. And so I read his book, and then I got it on audio, and I was reading it, and I couldn't understand, if I didn't know how all the processes worked early on. What would you say to investors, like to your listeners right now? Would you say it's good to get in the trenches, understand themselves, how it works before they create that out? Or are you giving your students a blueprint of how to never know how everything works, just hire it out?
Well, the point of that book, I believe, was that when she started making pies, we're probably going to spoil it for people that haven't read it, but maybe make some people curious. The pie maker, she loved making pies. She loved it more than anything, right? And then all the demand came in for the pies, right? So the thing that you love, here comes all the demand for it. But then you get to a place where you're working more, you're getting up a little bit earlier, you're staying a little later, right? Because more people want pies. And then it gets to a place where it's so overwhelming, you're like, I just need to hire somebody to come help me make some pies, right? But you do that, right? But they're not making the pies the way that you want them to be made. And so I think one of the big points of the book, and then obviously at some point she actually can't stand the smell of pies, right? When you go out from you loving to do real estate to you could very easily get into a place, and I know you and I know investors that can't stand it. Yeah. They can't stand anymore. They can't stand going and talking to a motivated seller anymore, talking to a buyer anymore, fixing up another house, right? Whether it's a $1,000 or $1 million house, it all means the same. There's just no passion anymore. And you kind of die out because you take on all of this, quote, control and stress on yourself. And so I think to answer your question from a circular point is there's one side that, I think it's real important that you go in and you get your hands dirty. And you get out there, you start making some mistakes, you fail forward, you learn what you don't want to do, right? Because it teaches you perseverance, it teaches you some great work ethic. But there's also a point where you have to be able to let go. And she wasn't. Right. She wasn't willing to let go, right? And she, even though she got somebody in there, she still was, you're not making the pies exactly the way I want them, right? And the way that McDonald's went from, 10,000 people served to billions served isn't because they had Harvard grads making their McDonald's patties, right? I mean, it's because they put together a process and systems that now they can have people run those processes and systems. And so I think that you do need to get dirty. There's a value in it, but there's got to be a point whenever you let go and you let somebody else come in. And you said this in the very beginning of our interview here, that there's people that can do things better than you. And in our minds, we're the ones that can do it the best, right? If we're being really gut level honest right now, the reason that we've got to certain points in our lives as drivers, as entrepreneurs, is because we did it. We didn't have to wait on anybody. We did it ourselves. But the thing that got you to there, and if you want to go to here, it's not going to be the same. What got you here won't take you there. And so I think that that's the growth process of understanding of letting go. But whenever we let go, we actually get more control, not less of it. And I think that's the mental shift for me is once I let go of certain things in my business and I was actually able to go, you know what, Bob over here can do a better job than I can at that. That was very liberating. But at some point, that was very, there's a very prideful part of it. There's a part you don't want to let go because if you do, it's going to go to hell in a handbasket. So I think there's got to be this process of you learning something and you know how to do it, but there's a place where you go, you know what, I can do it, but just because I can doesn't mean I should do it.
Or it's probably not the best use of your time once you understand that, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate your feedback on that.
Yeah. So a story to tell the answer, but yeah. I didn't really have a short answer for you.
That's all right. And I cut you off when you were talking about the apps that I use.
Yeah, the mobile app. Do you have a favorite mobile app you use?
I don't use Maps per se, but I will say when a seller calls and they come through my system, if they're qualified, it'll actually be texted out to myself. I'm in a small market in the Midwest, okay? I'm not in a big metro area. And so in order to get a deal that seller may have also got 3, 4, 5, 10 other postcards from my competitors. And so when our phone rings and they're qualified from my criteria, we want to get there now. We want them to sign a contract now on what we can negotiate, right? And so I always use the Zillow, and it's not really an app per se. I mean, you can get the app, but it's nothing fancy. And here's why: because when that comes through on my iPhone, I'm looking at it, I'm pulling up that address real quick, I'm looking at the history, I'm looking at the comparable solds, not what's active, but what's sold, and quickly, so I can at least have something to call them right away with.
Right away with, yeah. So it's not $100,000 off, right? Because sometimes the numbers are off, but you can kind of get some idea of where the property is and how much the value of the property.
Right, and also when you go to meet them and they're like, "Hey, I want 200,000," and you're like, "Well, man, these three comps in this neighborhood were at 140 and 120 and 100." They're like, you have that to share with them, and you don't want to do it as a know-it-all, but just to say, "I understand you want that, I can appreciate that, but in the reality, this is what's going on today."
Sure. Okay.
It's a really good starting point for your negotiation on price.
Sure. Okay. And so just a regular Zillow app?
Yes.
Okay. What's your morning routine? Do you have one? Do you get up a certain time? You do, you brush your teeth a certain way? You say affirmations? What's your morning routine?
I don't say affirmations, and I know it works for a lot of people, but I'll have breakfast with my family, take my kid to school.
About what time? What time do you usually get up, Brock?
Man, the cool thing about real estate investing, once you put your time in, is you can get up at the crack of noon and it doesn't matter. and so, I might work or have some fires to put out for a couple of days or this and that. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sleep in till 8 or 9. Right. But most mornings, we get up about 7. I get everyone out the house by 8. I'll come back to my office. I'll call every contractor that's on one of my job sites that are basically my foreman. And just to hit, hey, what'd you get done yesterday? What's on your plate today? Okay, so when I call you in the morning, that'll be done, right? Okay, and basically I touch them, and then the rest of my day is free.
Right.
And so it gives me time to, be like right now we're on your podcast, Corey, and it gives me time to pick up my kid for lunch, and it really, I'm at the cycle to have the freedom back in.
Right.
And a lot of people, and I know you do a ton of deals. You do way more deals than me, and I could do more deals, but I have a kind of a threshold of where I need to be each year. I have a goal. I want to make this much in cash. I want this much in cash flow added to the portfolios. And man, I can hit those things really fast. And so, yes, I could go get more, but I've really used real estate investing as a article for freedom. And I really enjoy a freedom lifestyle. And there is no push button. You and I both know we put our time in. But man, once you understand your why, and mine was always for freedom. I want to come and go on my own terms. I want to really live life by design, and so that's how I do my business today.
That's great. That's great. What's the single greatest lesson that you've learned that has helped you get to where you are today?
I think the tenacity part, and we talked about your why earlier, because you've got to have that to make it through those hard times. And there's a lot of hangups getting any business. It's not just real estate. It's taking control of any business you want to make work. And I think the tenacity to never give up and to always outperform your competitors. And so, I'll give you an example. A number of years back, I had a certain amount that I figured was the absolute most people I could hit for off-market deals on our marketing.
Okay, kind of like your world there.
Yeah, and it was like I felt it was maxed out. And just from conversation to conversation with different investors, and they were basically quadrupling it.
Wow.
And I couldn't understand it. And I went, man, I'm dropping the ball somewhere, and I'm going to get more deals than them. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get more marketing out to that targeted list, right? And so all of a sudden I had a aha moment of everything that was missing. So you never want to stop growing,
right?
Even if you feel like you're there. And so I was like, wow, I've missed this whole market the whole time. And so for me, it's just tenacity and always be better than what you're doing today.
That's great. And I agree with that too. You can always grow a little bit more and push yourself a little bit more. And, a lot of times we get complacent, So a great lesson is just to push forward, and it's so easy to not to either even take steps back, which sometimes can actually be a positive thing. But most of the time, we either flex or fold,
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever something comes up, and the lesson I think that comes out what you just said is that you need to flex, you need to push forward and grow, because you're going to be going through things in your life that are something that's uncommon, something that you're not familiar with. And instead of getting fearful and running back from it, you just need to push into it and just learn as you go.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to say about business owners, if you've not been experienced as a business owner, same thing as running an investing business for rentals, for wholesale, for fix and flip, is our mind is easily shifted back to complacency.
Right.
And hey, I've got enough today, and I'm just going to take it easy for the next half of the year, right? And you can do that. You have the choice and the freedom. But if you get complacent as a business owner in any business, your competitors will take you. They will run over all the deals that you've worked hard to kind of get out in front of, that you mailed 6 months ago.
Right.
They're hitting those 3 or 4 times before then. So just one more thing for your listeners: just be careful. Don't allow yourself to get complacent. It's a bad spot to be.
True. What are you most grateful for?
I would say probably my 3 F's: my faith, my family, and my freedom. And those are the 3 biggest things that just mean everything.
I love that. The faith, the family, and the freedom.
Yeah.
Simplified, and I can tell, you've talked about your why on this more than anyone I've ever done an interview with. And it shows me that you're thinking about it more than pretty much anything else. And that's really impressive, man. Congratulations to that. That's a great mindset to have.
I think, thanks for saying that, man. And your why should be so important going in. But when you reach the goals that you've set out for, the whole purpose of the business, your whys are fulfilled, but they don't go away. That why is still there, and the reason that you're on top of the mountain, right? But that's when you can enjoy them the most, the whole thing that you set out for. And my why just never goes away from that. And so, I hope that helps, because it's not just something to reach for; it's to enjoy when you get there.
I think many people are going to adopt your why, your faith, family, and freedom. I know you said that's what you're most grateful for, but you've even said freedom so many times in this interview, and I know that's what your why is. I mean, I know that the reason that you get up every day is to do what you do is because you want that freedom. You don't want to have anybody putting you in a circle, in a box, and saying you cannot do this and this. You want to have the freedom to do what you want with your family, how you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's so obvious that oozes out of you. It's really impressive.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. What point would you recommend hiring a coach or a mentor, and how important has that really been to your success? You alluded to a guy that you worked with in the beginning. It kind of hurt you to some degree, but it probably taught you some lessons, I guess, in there too. But what would you say now? Would you say, okay, now going through all these things in my life, this is the point that I recommend hiring a coach or mentor, and here's how it's really affected me in my life when I had a coach and mentor?
Yeah, I would say for your listeners, Corey, there's the 3 basic exit strategies most mainstream investors use: wholesaling, fix and flip, cash flow properties. Mm-hmm. And I think some investors get in and they want to educate and be experts on all 3 before they've ever done a deal. And I think once you understand what it is you want to, do you need chunks of cash now by flipping paper like you can teach your students? Do you want to take on a rehab or just rentals? You have to understand which one that is first, and then become an expert at that one. Start studying, and just to have the basic mind frame. Once you have that, then now you know to go forward. You could spend, there's so much information free on the internet, but the word free, you get what you pay for. You know what I mean? It's out there and you can get a basic. But once you have that basic information, I would say don't take any more time trying to study from this a guy or this. Get a mentor. It might be in your backyard. It might be someone that's just already done what you're doing, but it will really accelerate, get you to profit mode faster. It took me way too long to figure that out. If I had anything to do different, I would have hired and found any way under the sun possible to get the money to hire a mentor way faster than I did. And it would have really just catapulted. I would have been to where I am today way faster.
Faster, right? It would have accelerated where you wanted to go, what your desires of your results that you wanted. It would accelerated those.
Yes.
I agree. Yeah, that's in my life as well. Whenever I had a mentor, everything just makes it more permanent and accelerates to a benchmark or a goal that I want. And I have somebody pushing me and accountability that helps too. You know, I have a trainer at the gym, and sometimes, man, I don't want to get up and go at 5:15 in the morning to the gym, right? And get up and be there. But now I know he's going to be disappointed if I don't show up.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, there's at some point, it's almost like that's more important than actually me going for some reason. Right. It's like my word, or, you know, there's something bigger there. So that accountability plays into your success in a lot of ways, in the way you think about things. Sometimes you don't feel like it. You mentioned before, you get emotional with investments. You can get emotional with your, taking action. You don't want to take action because you don't feel like it. Well, that's when it's great to have a mentor, because the mentor says, no, whether you feel like it or not, I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. You can do it. I believe in your efficacy, your potential, what you're capable of. So is there a way that my audience here can get in touch with you? And what is a way that we can serve you? What would you need some assistance with, or what are your potential goals for this next year coming up? How can we serve you, and how can we contact you?
Here's what I would say. I don't really need anything help wise, but I appreciate you reaching out. It's my pipe. I tell your listeners, fill your pipeline. And start today, and it might take a while to build that up. And I say that to say the new year has not even taken over yet. We're in December, right? And so the next year, 2016, has not even happened. But because of treating real estate investing as a business, all of my goals are already met for next year. So if I didn't go to work for next year and the year after that, the pipeline is so full already with contracts and properties we already control. It's because you treat it as a business. And so what I would say is, understand, listen to Corey if you're his student, and if he's giving you those processes and the blueprint to follow and the accountability. Because once you fill that pipeline, it's hard to start. It takes real action, but you can do it. And so I'm really blessed to be where I'm at. And there's been so many people that have helped me along the way. And so when I say I don't usually like to help, I like to be the helper now, because there's so many people that have stepped up and with no strings attached, man, and just said, how can I help you? Just like you just did. And man, I appreciate that. And so for me, if you want to connect with me, I have a podcast on iTunes called Freedom Real Estate Investing Podcast.
Aptly named.
Yeah, and it's all about freedom. And so you listen to Corey and how he flips paper and follow those processes. And then if you want to send me a quick email, ask me a question about different freedom for your own self, you can go to freedomrealestateinvesting.com and just click on the contact button or call my office. So
that's great, Brock. We really appreciate you taking the time beyond here. Make sure you go check out Brock's podcast. You're going to pick up some nuggets from obviously some things that he's learned along the way, and really about freedom. If freedom is one of the big whys in your life, you're going to love listening to Brock and his teachings, things that he's learned, some of the wisdom and knowledge that he can impart to you from his journey. So thanks again, Brock. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here.
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate you letting me be your guest today.
Awesome. All right. Remember, get on to our next podcast for our Profit Master series, and remember, be a servant. Thanks again, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
You've been listening to another Real Estate Investing Profits Master Podcast series. To receive your free real estate book, Down and Dirty, Ultimate Real Estate Investing Quick Start Guide, how to quit your job to start flipping houses in 90 days or less, head online and go to realestateinvestingprofits.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Real Estate Investing Profits. Thanks again for listening and stay tuned for our next episode.